All right, today we're touching on surrogate motherhood, chapter 19 of the Act. So just quickly to get started, right, who can define surrogacy? Jackie.
That's when someone else is pregnant for another lady, so carries a child for someone else, not to raise the child themselves, but so that someone else can raise the child.
Okay.
And there are different ways that can happen.
Can you mention some?
So with IVF, it can either be a case of they are implanted with a fully like with an embryo, which is completely other to themselves. So an external sperm, external egg, or they can actually use one of the surrogate's eggs and they just get implanted with somebody's sperm so that they can carry a child, depending on what the problem of the mom who wants to carry the child is.
Okay. And Shakir, when would somebody seek surrogacy?
In cases where the woman can't fall pregnant, I think that's the main one. In cases where they don't want a husband, but they don't want to go, maybe they got their career to worry about or whatever, things like that.
Okay, all right. And just out of interest, what are our personal feelings around surrogacy? Jackie?
I understand it. I think it's a lot more complex than people make it out to be. But I think where there are very, very clear set boundaries in place, and very clear understandings and a whole lot of counseling, I think it can be beneficial. But I have more issues with, so it depends on the type. I have more issues with someone using their own egg and just receiving sperm and then producing a child and giving it away, that I have more issues with just in my head than someone who carries somebody else's child and basically incubates them. Either way, I think that it's complicated and a lot more complex than people make it out to be.
Okay, where do your issues stem from?
I believe that there is something to biology. I believe that there is a biological link that is innately designed in us, that when we're born, we look for people who look like us. And so I think it's very personal. Yeah, I think biological parents should, if at all possible, raise their own biological children.
Yeah, I like. Shakir, what are your thoughts on surrogacy?
Okay, so from an Islamic point of view, it's not allowed. All right.
Oh, tell us more.
So a woman using your husband's sperm.
I mean, that just sounds wrong, right?
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't seem okay at all. Yes.
Aside from implanting her egg into another woman, etc., that won't be allowed at all. All right, that's the first part. And then taking another man, maybe just a woman, carrying we're talking of surrogacy, not just pregnancy. Yes. So using a strange man, that means a man that's not married to her, that is like totally unlawful in Islam. So from an Islamic point of view, not on. And then the other part, from my own personal feeling, is just it like Jackie was saying, it could be much more complicated than actually anticipated. Like there were very few movies that I watched with surrogacy that actually where the caring mother got along with the mother that was going to keep the child afterwards. So yeah, it just doesn't. It's not normal. It's I don't know.
Okay, I like that. Right. So Jackie, are there any Christian beliefs around it?
No, nothing specific. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, I've actually never ever heard any Christian leader teach on it, speak on it, anything on it, to be honest.
Okay, so there's an area for research. All right, so Pedro, what is the feeling you have towards surrogacy?
I don't have any feeling towards it really. I have no problem with it. I think it's used in many instances where people can't, maybe people are infertile, they can't have children, same sex, same gender couples as well. So no, I don't really have any issues with it. I think it's fine.
Okay, so the one thing that I think we can all agree on is that surrogacy is a
How about
very
you, Nick?
me. Well,
Yeah,
I
what are your
think
thoughts?
that number one, as long as the woman who's the surrogate, wait, let me just pause this because please hold for 1 second.
Repeat yourself, as long as, yeah.
All right, so the one thing we can agree on is that surrogacy is a complicated issue. And there are many factors that need to be considered. At the core of all of the factors is the fact that there is a life that hopefully will be created through this process, right? And that life that once it's birthed, it has rights, all right? And those rights are what's important, as well as the parental rights of the surrogate, as well as the donors. All right, so you're talking about three parties' rights, and therefore the only court that can facilitate this process would be the High Court. And Pedro, you have to correct me if I'm wrong at any stage of this. All right. Therefore, the only court that can navigate this would be the High Court, because it's quite a complex section of life to work through. In order for it to be navigated, there is always a written agreement, right, that is in writing and confirmed by the High Court, right? This is the surrogacy agreement. And there's certain agreements that go into place, and they go into place with counseling, right? So obviously it must be entered in South Africa, it must be in writing, it must be signed. And one of the commissioning parents must be domiciled in South Africa, right? They must be living there, right? And so must the surrogate, right? For this agreement to count in South Africa. Consent is quite important. You'll see consent and the Children's Act go hand in hand a lot of the time, right? So where a commissioning parent is married or involved in a permanent relationship, the court may not confirm the agreement unless the husband, wife, or partner has given his or her written consent to the agreement and has become part to the agreement. So you cannot, as a married man, go and have a surrogate outside of, you just can't go be a donor dad or a surrogate unless your wife agrees. And likewise, your wife cannot be a surrogate for somebody else unless you agree to it, right? And you're party to that agreement. Where the surrogate mother is married or involved, right, the court may not confirm unless the husband or partner has given permission, right? Then, the genetic origin of the child. No surrogate motherhood agreement is valid unless the conception of the child is to be affected by the use of the gametes of both commissioned parents, or, if that is not possible due to biological, medical, or other reasons, the gamete of at least one of the parents, right? Or where there's a single person, the gamete of that person, right? So obviously, a gamete is a genetic cell. It's part of your DNA. So it's a sperm cell or your egg cell, right? It's just
sperm or egg.
very nice way of saying that part. All right. So obviously somebody has to be involved in there. All right, confirmation by court. The court may not confirm or agree to surrogate motherhood unless unless the commissioning parent or parents are not able to give birth to the child and the condition is permanent and irreversible. So when somebody approaches a social worker and says, we are thinking about surrogacy, will you guide us through? You will go through this checklist in order to assist them in understanding what the court would look for, because at the end of the day, the court will make that decision based on the checklist, right? The court will look at the commissioning parents, right? And they'll make sure that they are domiciled in South Africa, they've got permission from each other and consent, right? And that they are suitable persons to accept the parenthood of the child that is to be conceived, right? So they must be able to at least be suitable to be parents, right? And they can accept and understand the legal consequences of the agreement. So that's on the commissioning parent side. Then the surrogate, right? Is she domiciled in South Africa? Right? Is she a suitable person to act as a surrogate mother? Right? Does she understand the legal consequences of the agreement she's entering to? Very importantly, she must not be using surrogacy as a source of income, right? Because that is sketchy. Let me just have a sip of water. Right. We must be able to prove that the surrogate has entered into the agreement for altruistic reasons and not for commercial purposes, right? Very important, the surrogate mother must have a documented history of at least one pregnancy and one viable delivery. So she's not giving birth to stillborn children. She's had a viable delivery of a child, all right? Right? Has a living child of her own, basically. Right. The agreement includes adequate provisions for the contact, the care, the upbringing, and general welfare of the child that is to be born in a stable home environment, including the child's position in the event of the death of the commissioning parents or one of them, or the divorce separation before the birth of the child, right? So like the parenting plan that we discussed a few weeks ago, all of those requirements would come into play, and that parenting plan has to be created to cover all of these likelihoods in the case of a surrogacy. Right? In general, having regard to the personal circumstances of the family, situations of the parties, and above all, the interests of the child, the agreement should be confirmed. Okay, so let's look at this more in a practical sense. All right. Let's role play. Yeah? Pedro has come to you, Jackie and Shakira, in your joint practice, and he has said, "Surprise! I want to have a child." After you call me, so that I can.
Yay, Pedro! Have a kid.
So after you call me, so that I can explain to him that this is the dumbest thing in the world, right? You
Best
now
thing
have
ever.
you now have to go through what the parent would have to prepare to bring to the court, so that they understand what the whole process is, right? So, Shakir, what questions and what report would you start preparing the parent to do?
Do you have agreement with all the parties?
Okay.
So he says yes.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any exchange of money taking place?
Mm-hmm.
No. The person that the child is going to go to, or the surrogate, just the one. I have a question on this question, but anyway, I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Is there adequate care, provision, all of those things for the child?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay, let's sign the paper and let's get you fathered.
Okay. So the report will be basically answering those questions, right? And you'll look at financial income, what jobs you have, what is your plan for providing for the child, do you have a partner? Okay, Jackie, would you like to add a bit to that?
I was literally just going to say, if you had a partner, has the partner consented to it? Has there been full agreement on whose sperm is going to be used? How was that agreement reached? And then a full parenting plan with finances, childcare, etc., etc. And then obviously a full report would need to be done on the surrogate mother as well.
Okay, so Pedro then says, well, surprise, we were chilling at Mary's house, and we all spoke about it, and surprise, surprise, we used a turkey baster, and we have fertilized Mary. All right, let's have that as an example. So we need to move rather quickly. All right, what does the law say about that? So number one,
Sanitize the turkey.
sorry. Well, number one, get rid of the turkey baster completely. That is the first rule in that case. Please destroy it, burn it with fire. Right. Also, raise your standard of friends. Because no friend is like, hi, please fertilize me, unless they're a special friend. Right. Okay. So
How high was
yeah, exactly. Firstly, you do a drug screen, destroy the turkey baster, and suggest better friends. So the law says that no artificial fertilization of the surrogate mother may take place before the surrogate motherhood is confirmed and agreed to by the court. All right. It cannot also happen after 18 months from when the court agreed. So basically what this means is have your stuff together, right? Because once it goes and is confirmed, you have 18 months to artificially inseminate someone. Artificial insemination is not a one-hit wonder necessarily all of the time. Very often it takes multiple attempts at fertilization, right? So you have 18 months to do it. This is something you would inform them, right?
Can I ask a question?
Mm.
Forgive the directness of this, and if I've missed something, sorry. Would there be any legal precedent for allowing, so let's say Pedro's in a partnership, he's got a partner, could he sleep with Mary multiple times to get her pregnant, even though he's not in a relationship with her, in order for her to be a surrogate mother, or does it have to be via IVF?
I mean, he could, but that's just even worse, right? It's like you're just making it worse. But okay, Pedro, discuss that for us.
No, actually, you can use any method that you seem fit to fertilize someone. But normally people do use IVF.
For real? You can use
Yes.
any method? No.
Well, I mean, the
Yeah.
goal
Is
is
it like-
to get the sperm to the egg, right?
Yeah,
How you bake the cake is not interesting. You just
Okay,
need to.
so
I would-
so technically, he and his partner could then sleep with Mary, and then they wouldn't know who the babies was.
DNA testing afterwards.
Yes, but also then you've just introduced 3 people to the bounds of hell, no doubt.
This is just
Right.
weird. I thought it had to be IVF. Can it really
Well,
be any?
the normal circumstance is IVF, but I have heard of instances where people have just done the deed and they skip
Yeah.
the whole process because they cannot actually afford IVF. IVF is very, very expensive.
Yeah.
This
It's
is
the most-
profoundly disturbing.
And I mean, it's a
Because
working system, right? Sorry, Shika.
Artificial insemination also could give you multiple 6 tuplets and all of this stuff.
Yeah. God, could you imagine? Okay, Shika, you had a question before we move on to the status of the child.
Yeah, the question was, I see this now, I think it also applies to adoption and everything, is if the couple is poor,
Mhm.
does it mean they cannot be surrogate or they cannot be adopt or all of those things?
Pedro?
Well, the social worker would look at the circumstances and if they can afford a child, but if they can afford the living expenses of a child, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, so financial viability is what is measured there, right? Because in reality, if the person cannot have the means to support themselves, then they would not be able to support their child, and willingly or introducing a child into that agreement or into that state where they will inevitably end up in the system or struggling or suffering would be considered cruel. Right, so we need to check that they can actually manage it. And the barrier isn't very high to allowing it. You know, you don't have to be a millionaire Well, you do if you're going to do IVF, but you don't have to be a million. But you do need to be well off enough to, not well off, but you have to be coping, right? So your desire for a child cannot be secondary, cannot be first when compared to the life that the child will be forced to live once they are born from you. Am I correct there, Pedro?
Correct.
I feel like I'm bordering on eugenics. That's a problem in life. Okay, fine. So let's
So can
look.
I ask another question?
Yes.
So this was an actual situation that I dealt with about 7 years ago, where a surrogate came to the church for counseling. I did. I told her, how dare you, and you're going to hell. But seriously, she came and she asked, she said, no, she's as a surrogate, she's been fertilized, whatever. She was about halfway through a pregnancy, and they've discovered that there's something wrong with the pregnancy.
Yep.
And they want to abort, and she cannot. She doesn't agree with abortion, and it's so late. It's already 20 weeks, and what does she do? And is God going to hate her and send her to hell? It was a really, really challenging situation we journeyed through with her. But yeah, what rights does the surrogate have in terms of the baby, especially if and is it different if it's the surrogate's egg or an external egg?
Okay, so luckily we are going to cover through that. I think that's actually discussed.
There we are.
Yeah, there we are.
Termination. Okay.
All right, it's actually discussed a bit later in the Act. Okay, so one thing to know is that South Africa actually has one of the most advanced surrogacy sections of the Act. All right, our laws around surrogacy are some of the most progressive, most advanced, and most detailed laws that we have regarding it. So it's a really well-formed part of our Act. Okay, so what is the agreement on the status of the child? Right, what's the effect? Number one, right, is that any child born of a surrogate, right, is for all purposes the child of the commissioning parents from the moment of the birth of the child, right? So for all intents and purposes, the second the child is born, surprise, you belong to your commissioning parents, right? The surrogate mother is obliged to hand over the child as soon as possible after the birth, or as reasonably possible, right? The surrogate mother or her husband, partner, relatives have no rights of the parenthood or care of the child. Right? The surrogate mother, your partner, right, have no right of contact with the child unless provided for in the agreement between the parties. And this is a very, very rare occurrence where that would take place, and the court would raise its eyebrow when the professionals submit their reports. The professional will definitely raise their eyebrows at that. All right. The surrogate motherhood agreement may not be terminated after the individual has been fertilized. Right. So once the ingredients are in the oven, you cannot then say, surprise, we don't want the child anymore. All right. Well, you can't terminate the agreement. Right. The child will have no claim for maintenance from the surrogate mother or any of her family. Okay. So termination of surrogate. Yes.
Can the surrogate mother terminate the pregnancy?
Well, we are going to get there. We are
Okay.
going to get there. So surrogate mother, right, who is also a genetic parent of the child, may at any time prior to the lapse of a period of 60 days after the birth of the child terminate the surrogate motherhood agreement by filing notice with the court. So if the mother has donated her own genetic material to the creation of this child, she can terminate it for up to 60 days after the birth of the child, and she can say, surprise, I'm keeping it. All right. The court must terminate the confirmation of the agreement in terms of section 295 after they've listened to the case, they've listened to everyone, right? And it's been a process of the court. The surrogate mother incurs, yeah.
So we're saying that once the child is born, if she's the genetic mother, she can choose to keep the child.
for up to
For 60 days after the birth of the child.
Yeah, so even on day 59,
That's
if she
insane.
decides, screw it, I want it, it's mine, then she can keep it.
Oh my word. I did
Right.
not know that.
Because it is her genetic.
It is her
material.
child. Yes. I get that.
Right.
But hectic.
Sorry. So if she does cancel the agreement, right? She doesn't owe the parents any, the commissioning parents, any expenses apart from the payments made by the commissioning parents as compensation for blood tests or whatever it may be. She might be held for that. It's generally not done that way. Right, so the effect of termination. Right. After the child is born, they don't use section 295, they use section 298, which we don't have to go too much into. Where the agreement is terminated before the child is born, the child is the child of the surrogate mother, her husband or partner. All right? Make sense? Or if none, then the commissioning father from the moment of the child's birth. So if it's terminated and she's not yet given birth, surprise, it is now your child. If the child is born and she dies, right, and it was cancelled, it then becomes her partner's child, right, because it's her genetic material, and then you'd apply the parenting act that we did right in the beginning, the parenting section of the act that we did right in the beginning.
Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
But what about the so let's say you've got a commissioning couple, husband and wife, and you've got a lady, and so you use her egg, his and the husband's sperm. And she's planning to be a surrogate. She carries baby all the way through, gives birth, decides, no, I want to keep this child. So she's allowed to do that within 60 days.
Yes.
But now the husband of the commissioning couple is the genetic father. So surely he has rights to the child too. He must have some rights.
Well, you would have if she'd have to fight for those rights. It would be very hard to prove because there was an agreement in place.
Yes.
To it.
So it would need to be a co-parenting plan.
I think the court would decide a lot on what that would look like, to be honest.
That is so weird.
Pedro, please step in at any time if you have
That is
insight
quite,
on that.
that is quite heavy because I mean she's using the woman's egg and the woman's
it's her egg.
sperm.
No, if it's her egg, if it's her genetic material, then she has.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, Shakira, I lost you there completely.
I say no, then it's fine. If it's her own egg, then it's fine.
Yeah, if it's her own egg, then it's completely up to her. She is the genetic parent of the child. Right? The surrogate mother. Wait, where am I? The surrogate mother and husband are part of the is obliged to accept. Okay, so if the surrogate mother has a husband or a partner, right, they are obliged to accept the obligation of parenthood. If she has none of them, then the commissioning father would accept the obligation of parenthood. Right. The downside to it is that the commissioning parents have no rights of parenthood and can only then obtain such rights through the adoption of that child. So once the agreement is revoked, they have no rights to parenthood. They will then have to adopt. Right? The child also has no claim for maintenance from the commissioning parents. Okay. So how do we go about terminating the pregnancy? Okay. Number one, we need to understand that if you terminate the pregnancy, obviously the surrogate agreement is terminated as well. Right? The decision to terminate lies with the surrogate mother, but she must inform the commissioning parents of a decision prior to the termination right? And consult with the commissioned parents before the termination is carried out, right? So in essence, you have control over your body and you can decide what's in it or not, but you should consult with the commissioning parents, right? If she decides to terminate, then she incurs no liability to the commissioning parents for exercising the right to terminate the pregnancy, apart from the payments that they've made by Section 301, right? So if they pay for blood tests, pregnancy tests, sonos, and scans and stuff like that, they can then claim for it. Okay. Pedro, are we up to scratch there? Does it sound right to you?
Yes, all good.
Okay, so basically your body, you decide what happens to it. Jackie, does that answer your question?
It does when there's, so basically, I mean, when it's your genetic child and you basically just had a sperm, it's basically your child. You basically have first rights to this child all the way through. You have a right of termination, you have everything. I'm curious if it's different for where the genetic material is entirely not yours.
Okay, so I think from my experience, I've got very limited experience, and I think I've only worked with 2 cases or so of it. Once the child is inside the surrogate, even if it is the 2 other people's cells, right, that are in there, the termination still lies with the surrogate one. The right to termination still lies with her. No one can prevent that from happening, right? At no stage will you be forced to carry out a pregnancy or a birth. Right, so let's go on to payment.
What if the, so along the same lines, and I think it'll come on also with payments, what if you have this surrogacy agreement, and then the commissioning parents bail, the child's yours, even though it might genetically not be yours at all. You are now liable for this child. If they can the commissioning parents terminate?
So they cannot terminate the agreement once you have been fertilized.
Okay, so they have to keep the agreement in place.
They
until
have to
baby
keep
is
the
born.
agreement, and upon the birth of the child, the parenting responsibility will fall onto them.
Okay.
Right, so they
And if they
can't
don't?
leave you with expenses. What do you mean?
Well, what if they don't? What if they're just like, haha, psych, bye? Like, can they
Then
be
the
like
child
arrested?
well, they can't force you to keep a child, right? But they can force you to look after the child and provide for the child. But that's why we have a adoption system, right? But they can be held financially liable for the care of the child.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So let's quickly hypothesize around this, right? Why can we not pay someone to be a surrogate?
Because then you make baby factories.
Okay. Shakir?
Can become
Wholesale.
very
A baby wholesaler.
Yes. Yes. Which used to be my name on dating. Sorry. Yes. Shakir, why can't you pay?
Because it can be exploited. For a couple desperate to have a child will pay anything, and the person can grab them by the nose.
Yeah, it could be exploitative. 100%. Pedro, add to that.
Child trafficking as well.
You can. Yeah, that would create child trafficking. That's in essence what it would be. So, because in essence, what you'd be doing is upon the birth of the child, you would then be involved in paying for another
you're
human's
buying a
life.
child.
You're buying a child.
Yeah.
Right.
People should not be for sale.
So no person, right, can give or promise to give any compensation in cash or in kind to a person who carries the child, right? Except, right, they can cover the compensation for expenses that relate directly to the artificial insemination, fertilization, and pregnancy, right, and birth of the child. right? And of course, for the surrogacy motherhood agreement, right? They can also, the commissioned parents can also offer to pay for loss of earnings by the surrogate mother as a result of the surrogate motherhood agreement. And they can pay for the insurance to cover the surrogate agreement for anything that may lead to death or disability brought about by the pregnancy. Okay, so that's just basic workmen's rights that are covered there. Okay. However, any professional that does a report or provides a service, right, is entitled to payment for the services, even though it is a surrogacy. Right? The
Explain.
identity. So, for example, I cannot pay you to have my child, right? But I can pay the psychologist for guiding us through this process.
Okay.
Right? That's basically what that is saying. Right?
Medical
So it's
aid.
not a, yeah, but it's not an altruistic, everybody's involved, no one's getting paid, it's all from the goodness of our hearts. There's a very real life implication. That's what this is trying to say. Right? So there are costs incurred, and those costs need to be paid. Right? And the commissioned parents would pay them. But if you are paying the social worker, the private social worker, for helping you navigate this time, that would not count as committing the crime of buying. Right? A lot of people shy away from that because they feel it crosses a line because I've paid professionals to do these reports and whatever. No, you are fully entitled to do that. Okay, so the identities of the motherhood agreement and all three parties or four parties that are party to this agreement may not ever be published. It is closed, right? You cannot publish any facts that identify the person as being born as a result of a surrogate motherhood agreements, right? So the identity and all identities are kept private in this. It is a very personal matter. There are certain acts that are prohibited in this section of the law. Number one, right? You cannot artificially fertilize a woman for a for surrogacy unless it is approved by the court. Right? So you can't just go around randomly fertilizing women, right? And no person may in any way or with any view to compensation make known that you'd be willing to be entered into a surrogate motherhood agreement. So you cannot advertise your womb for sale. There are forums and there are channels to follow in order to make it work. All right. Surrogacy is not something that a social worker would have a lot to do with, apart from usually being the first person that, or one of the first people that people make contact with, doing the family analysis report, which is the background, what they do, how the family functions, how many other children there are, that, and then referral on to the court, in which a lawyer would then go into and do the work at the High Court. Right? So a social worker would have a limited role, but the social worker's role in this case is very much informative. Right? They would have to collate the information, put it together, and guide as to what would be required. All right. Are there questions and ideas around surrogacy at this point?
So a woman,
And the child, sorry, go Shakil.
a woman says, I don't want to be a mother, but I like being pregnant.
No. Also, which one is it? But okay, yes.
Yeah, what world?
Okay, yes. So she decides she doesn't want to be a mother. She just wants to be pregnant.
And I'll just pop them out for you. Just bring your egg, bring your sperm, I'll do it for you. She can't do that.
No. No. That is definitely a prohibited. Right? 100% not okay. All right, Jackie, you have a question?
Does the child have any access to their surrogate after they're born?
No, not at all.
Again, I have such
Right.
issues,
Because
especially if it's a biological. Like,
so,
that's rubbish. It's the same with a sperm
mm,
donor. Like, sorry, you should have access to your biological parents, at least to information about them. There should be something. I think that's a massive invasion of rights.
I think
Personally.
the purpose of the surrogacy, right, has been met. Right, there's an agreement. The agreement's done. It's like wanting to know which oven the Woolies cake was baked in. Right, you're just not privy to that information. Right, nor is there a record to be kept of it. But Pedro, you can correct me if you're right, if there's a difference.
I think we did cover this a few weeks back.
Yes.
That if the child is curious to know about who the parent is, I think I'm not exactly too sure, but I think the child needs to get consent or something from they would get consent from the commissioning parents first.
So
I think
that
in the
is
age of
usually for the sperm
something like
donor
that.
after the age of 18.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm not sure whether that would apply in this case as well.
Yeah, I doubt it would, but that is a very good point. It does require some research. Okay, perfect. So that is a very small part of the act, which is quite detailed, right?
Hello,
We
how are you?
are-
And thank you. I'm in lectures. Can I chat with you afterwards? Thanks.
All right.
Oh,
We
I
are
wasn't
going-
muted. Sorry, guys.
No worries. Right. So for the next session, we're going to go more into care centers and inspections and how care centers work, what the different types of care centers are, and what the social worker's role is within the different care centers, right? So we're going to go into slightly less abstract work as such, and more into what you would probably be doing more than surrogacy. But it is important, nonetheless, to know how surrogacy works, to know what the rights of the parents are, to know what the rights of how the rights work, termination of it, and how it works from there. Right. So that's me for today. Are there any questions on anybody's side?
I'm good.
Okay. Pedro,
Good.
you good? Jacqueline?
Good.
Okay. Perfect. Sorry, there's a don't use this. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys very much. I will see you bright and early next week to go into childcare sector and all the rules that go into that space. Have a lovely evening, everybody.
Cool.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers, bye.